Hello, hey. Yeah, I drank a bottle of wine as soon as I woke up this morning, so please bear with me as I go through this. Love and intimacy in virtual reality. That was the talk that I'm scheduled to give, going inside the central metaverse. So my name's Guyenette. I'm a futurist and a creative technologist, and I do a lot of technology, and I always like dealing with the edge of technology and trying to create things that haven't been created before. So at the moment I'm spending a lot of time with biohacking and AI. I've been on a journey through virtual reality and trying to make it central. So I'm going to pass on some things to you. So, love and intimacy in virtual reality. So that's kind of where it stands at the moment, I would say. It's virtual reality, isn't it? It's like you're having to extend your mind to feel as though you're being intimate with something, but really it's just technology. It's not, you're not being intimate with humans. You're having to extend your consciousness to pretend you are. So love and intimacy in virtual reality. So before we go into that, I'm going to go into virtual love and intimacy in reality and going inside each other. So I was starting to think how we see reality and how we're dealing with reality. There's lots of talk about how maybe we're living in a simulation right now. I'm not going to go into that, but I think everyone's read about it, and it's like maybe there's a 20% chance, according to Nick Bostrom. Elon Musk thinks it's almost definite, but there's things behind the reality that we know and we see with our senses that we haven't quite discovered yet through our discoveries in physics and neuroscience. So just like a quick little bit of biology here. So we've got the brain, and generally, the brain has evolved to sort of come out, like each layer that we evolved as we furthered our brain, as it got bigger, it layered up, and we got extra layers. So this is what we evolved the most earliest, and then as we kind of come up around the frontal lobe, that's what we've evolved most recently. And according to the Triune brain model, which is we've got the lizard brain, which is the the occipital lobe, and then the mammal brain, which is like the limbic system, which kind of like came afterwards, after we sort of became mammals, and then the human brain, which is the most recently evolved part of us, which is the neocortex. And so a lot of our very core lower level parts of our being that comes from the lizard brain and the mammal brain. So these are things that, like sex, just things that we want, things that we just want to crave and we just can't stop going for them. Things like dopamine help us grab for these, and we just can't prevent ourselves from going for them. But there are ways. So there's a lot of neurotransmitters. We're not going to go into these, but these are really good to learn. And the more you can learn about yourself and the neurotransmitters in your brain, the better. I got my DNA tested by 23andMe and cross-referenced it with NutraHack, and I found out that I've got quite small dopamine receptors, which is really useful for me. So then now I know about my own dopamine. That's why I get really bad come-downs as well. So it's like all my friends went, but I would. But it's these things are really good to know, and to look inside yourself and to find out what happens inside your own brain. We're going to talk about dopamine and serotonin specifically. So this is the chemical alignment for dopamine and the chemical alignment for serotonin. Dopamine being the reward and pleasure part of the brain. So that's what you get for reward and pleasure. So that's whenever you get something you want to do, you're getting some dopamine. You're getting a hit of dopamine. Like most things are generally just us hunting dopamine and serotonin. Serotonin's right here is happiness. Noradrenaline, that's your pain inhibitor. People often forget about that one when they're trying to top themselves up with neurotransmitters, with alternative therapies and things. But oxytocin, that's the love glue. Everyone loves some oxytocin. That really keeps us together, like literally. But we're all hunting oxytocin. But dopamine has such a core part on all of the parts that we're hunting for in life, really. And we're not hunting for any of that. We're trying to stay away from cortisol. Fuck cortisol. It's like we're always trying to get rid of that as much as we can. But so it's a requirement to get us to stay away from things like that, sadness, shame, disgust, anger, fear, to stay away from the things that you don't want to be near. But yeah, so dopamine levels. So here we can see food. So we got up to like a 150 basal output. And sex gives us 200. So like you can kind of see it's the same pattern, how sex is quite similar to food in terms of dopamine. So we're getting the same kick, and we'll hunt for this when we're chasing for sex. So you see like female presence. This is particularly a male that's getting this dopamine hit. But then when we look at the effects of drugs on dopamine release, so amphetamine, that's going right up to 1,100, which is like, whoa, it's not really good for your dopamine receptors. Cocaine, that's like 350. Nicotine, that's basically the same as sex. There's that dopamine you're getting. So you can see how like these very addictive drugs are kind of the same as sex, and how we can constantly want to keep fighting for this like physical dopamine release that we get with sex, or like very physical sex. So yeah, chasing the dopamine. So as you can see, this is a roll of meat searching for someone on Tinder, and always flicking right, because they're just looking for the dopamine. Could get dopamine from any one of those spaces, couldn't you, Mr. Meat? But that's the thing. It's always chasing for dopamine, and that's something that a lot of us sometimes chase for, if we're not trying to take control of maybe our lower sort of active limbic system on our lizard brain. So the thing is, when you're chasing that, it equates to masturbation, I believe. You know, it's you're kind of really just kind of, you're both chasing for the dopamine for yourselves, rather than actively, really compassionately trying to understand each other's bodies and get within each other's psyches. And that's one of the problems of just chasing that dopamine. So what was one of the ways, like sort of to get around this in like a modern way, if like you want to be able to see your way through this, it's like a bit of sex hypnosis or magic or tantra. Any one of three of these pathways can show you avenues to other ways of compassionate sex and deeper understanding of each other. I totally recommend going to like a class of any of these things if you can ever get a chance. But yeah, with sex hypnosis, you can, through breathing and blood alignment, you can move blood to certain parts of the body that it wouldn't go to as much. So here we've got the temperature of the human body in different emotions. As you can see, happiness is like you've got like a warm temperature everywhere. Depression is like it goes down. So this is like blood flow and temperature of the body. And you can see where it goes to the different blood flows. And this is the subconscious deciding to do this. Like, this is happening. This is your brain deciding to do this, right? It is you doing this, but maybe your like conscious isn't quite aware of it, but you can tap into that. So like directing blood flow. So there's a way of directing blood flow to your hands. If you really focus and meditate into parts of your body, like into your hands, you can make your hand become warmer. You really have to like focus and meditate. You can feel like your hand becomes warmer. You focus and it becomes more sensitive. So there's a thing like a tumor meditation, which is a Tibetan form of meditation, and the Tibetan monks actually melt snow. I mean, he's not Tibetan. It's Will Hof, and he's quite famous for doing tummo meditation. He's like called the Iceman, if you've ever heard of him. But they can melt snow around them just by meditating, and they can stay in minus 27 degrees for like an exceedingly long period of time just by keeping their body warm and pushing out to the outside of their body to keep the insides hot. And this is like them sort of tapping into their subconscious to do that. So blood flows differently for different people. For men, it generally goes down to the groinal area, and it goes down south. For women, like when sexually excited, that is. For women, it's often up around the chest and around the breasts and around the heart. And that's quite often just a way that where the blood ends up flowing in sexual excitement. And so there's a method for doing that which I've done, and I think it's really great. It's a little bit of like sort of sex hypnosis and sex magic, but from alternate breathing back and forth and meditating with each other, and sort of imagining energy flowing from the female downwards. It can be like two males or two females, but the person that's on top, the energy flowing downwards and then out through the groin and up through the male and up through the top of the head and then coming down through the female. Because quite often there's this idea of energy coming back in reverse and this feeling of like the male sort of giving into the female. And this kind of like sort of the sex hypnosis and this breathing, it's really deep. There's this thing that you know sometimes when you feel like you don't want to have sex but you just want to cuddle. Like this is the other side of it, really. This is like going deeper than cuddling. This is really, really getting deep and understanding someone. And you could do this just with someone that you've just met, and you'd suddenly like get to know someone's energy and how they feel. And it is kind of like sex on drugs without the drugs or the sex. It's really cool. So I totally recommend trying out some of these techniques. So yeah, prolactin. That's as you can see, there's like so after orgasm, the dopamine sort of shoots down, and then prolactin comes in, and it can stay in for up to 2 weeks after orgasm, and it functions to shut down sexual desire. And this is one of the things about abstaining from orgasm. It's actually quite good to do that. It's actually quite healthy for a period of time. So sometimes there's points where we just do it every day, you know. And I think sometimes it's nice to do that, certainly as a male. But yeah, emotional pullout. I think I might sort of skip along a little bit, but this is about I've got a friend who she doesn't want to get oxytocin released in her brain, so as soon as she's had sex with someone, she rolls over to the side and pushes them away so she doesn't fall in love, because she's trying to hack herself to not get oxytocin, which I think is really sad. I think it's like oxytocin, yeah, allow it in and allow each other to love each other and just let it happen. I think go deep with it and don't fear it. But yeah, so that was virtual love and intimacy in reality. So back to love and intimacy in virtual reality, going inside the central metaverse. So yeah, back to here. Okay, so now we've had a little bit of neuroscience. So holoportation, as we know, that's a thing. That's like Microsoft have been doing things with like a videogrammetry, and there's sensors you can do it yourself at home with a Kinect, and you can get pretty good things. You can do this live pretty much now as well, like at home. So this will lead to things like holo Tinder, which is going to be really beautiful. You're going to have a date with someone instantly, and then they'll be next to you on the sofa, and you can have a chat, and then you could date someone else, and you could pick someone else, and you could just keep on flicking through people. But you could get this feeling of like eye-to-eye contact, and seeing that you're able to speak with each other face to face, and it's not quite the same as touching each other, but it's still, you can go quite far with that, but you know, it's not quite there. So what we're going to need is body communication, because that is so important, right? These guys are naked, they're probably dudes, and they're like, hey, how's it going? You know, they just do that. Like cats do that. We don't do that as humans. We're wearing clothes and we're like, hello, how are you? You know, but like cats are just naked and they're like rubbing each other, body communication. We're just not doing that much as humans these days. So yeah, so there's things like the Tesla suit, which is... So how long do I have, by the way? Is that 10 more? 10? So there's plenty of time. Okay, so yeah, the Tesla suits, and that is kind of a haptic bodysuit, which is supposed to allow you to feel each other inside virtuality. But if we watch a quick clip, and there's a lot of these things around now at the moment, so let's skip through. Have we got any audio?
Previously, any haptic clip.
Yeah, okay, cool. So let's get through. So we're going to get to the point where he reviews it and he wears it, and we'll get to see what he thinks of it.
Paintballs, it prototype is fun. It doesn't feel as if I'm being hit by paintballs. It does feel like there's a little electric thing going off. So it feels better than a video game, because it's quite fun to get a little pain here.
For now, it feels like sort of sharp, maybe?
Yeah, it just feels like there's a little electric sort of shock going on there. You were saying also, though, that I can get a hug.
Yes.
Right.
So
give me a hug. I mean, we've only just met, Dimitri, but give me a hug. There we go. I feel it, baby. I feel it. That was like no hug you've ever had, has it? Is that just the first stage of development?
exactly, and this is a matter of calibration. For example, the big mechanics behind the hug is not just only you feel something.
Trying to get across is that it's pretty shit and it doesn't really work, and that's the thing with these things at the moment. We're not that far with something back up. Yeah, we're not that far with haptic feedback to allow us to really communicate with each other. I quite like the VR glove. That's quite. I won't show the videos, but you can interact with each other, and you feel the haptic feedback on the glove. That will give us another way to be able to interact. But yeah, it's okay. I think the haptic, it's okay. That's okay. It feels like this haptic is out quite soon. But I think really what's going to happen for us to really feel each other inside virtual reality is going to come from ultra haptics, which is sort of haptic feedback with ultrasound. So the way that it works is the ultrasound kind of comes up, and you start feeling it. So it's using sound, and once you get a full room full of ultra haptics, that's when maybe haptics will be good enough that we could feel each other inside virtual reality. But until we get to that point, it's just not going to happen. It's going to be an extension of virtual reality. You can do it with your mind, and you can extend it with imagination. But to really communicate and to be really genuinely, deeply intimate with each other through body, we're going to need ultra haptics. But yeah, so we have a quick look at this. So this is the very beginning of this stuff at the moment. It's just being able to interact with technology without touching it, and then feeling something in the air, being able to feel something about it existing there. I mean, these are like really small little uses of it, but it's the very beginning of it. When you start getting like bigger things that are going to be able to go across the room. So you feel the things in the air. So yeah, some other good haptic feedback devices around at the moment. The butt kicker, it's pretty cool. Subpack, you can get resonance and feel resonance in the body, and you can actually make people feel certain emotions with resonance inside you as well. So you can make certain organs vibrate using resonance, which is really cool with this stuff. So you can actually feel really worried with this thing, or you can feel really happy. So so you can sort of change people's emotions with that. So it's a bit like a sound bath, and I think if you've ever had a sound bath, I think that's closer to where we're going to get if we're going to be central with each other inside virtual reality. So yeah, coming to a bit of a close now, I think. So there's been some sexual revolutions in history. There's the Indian sexual revolution. That kind of went like that. And then there was the Western 1960s sexual revolution, which we're kind of still living through. But yeah, it kind of got us to here, and now people are kind of struggling. Should we have polyamorous relationships? Shall we, what are we doing? Are we experimenting? Are we kind of having open relationships? Divorce rates are right down. Like, how are we dealing with things? And I think maybe like now there might be a time of revolution of deeper compassion. And I think with things like Tantra and sex magic and sex hypnosis, I think we're going to be able to get a deeper compassion with each other, and just learning to body communicate better, I think is going to give us everything that we want. So yeah, it's all behind the fear, so just try it out. So be scared. Everything you dream of is behind the fear, so just go behind that curtain. Yeah, so lots of love, and yeah, hopefully virtual reality will bring us closer together, which I'm sure it will. telecommunication. So yeah, that's everything. But I did co-directed a piece called Viens, which is available to see upstairs. So go and check it out sometime. Thanks.
Carl, thank you. Carl Guyenette, everyone. Is there some sort of question for Carl? Something you want to know about Tantra, maybe? It's not the case. Ah, there maybe.
Hey, my name is Christian. I just wanted to know, what do you think about the opportunity to use body modification in line with virtual reality, and how you can super boost emotions and bodies and...
But you know, I think actually like where body modification is going to go next is with biohacking, like with CRISPR and Cas9. There's a project which I'm going to go over to New York soon to learn how to use it, because it's just become possible to be able to splice DNA with adult humans. And I really love the idea of being glow-in-the-dark with jellyfish DNA, because that's been known what that sequence is that does that, and to be able to splice it in shouldn't be too difficult. It should be like fairly beginner level. but I think that's where body modification is probably going to go, I think, rather than sort of virtual reality. However, we are probably going to be wearing some kind of contact lens rather than having our our phones and our computer screens, and it will just take over. Just a contact lens. And like some sort of little photon sort of pusher that we'll wear. Maybe something up here. Don't know. We'll wait and see what Magic Leap brings.
Thank you. Stairs. Yeah.
Mine is rather a comment, but a question. I'm just wondering if it could be overwhelming for people to experience that it's not right for everyone to be so close, so intimate.
Well, I think a lot of people kind of, they don't realize what it is until they experience it. They don't realize what they're missing. And I think it's always fear that prevents it. It's always fear, without trying it. I mean, there's nothing to lose. So I guess it's just trying, but it's one of those things where it's you can't quite do it from like a YouTube video. It's better to go to a class and have the body communication given to you, and that's the thing. I mean the thing is, you don't have to have sex. It's just about sort of just communication, sort of deep body language.
But it is a question whether people are ready for the technology to be touching, or for the Tesla suit, for example.
Yeah, well, the Tesla suit is. I put that video in there because it's kind of rubbish. I think it's, and people will tout these things to get money and funding, but then actually it's a bit naff. It's just electricity running through, and it doesn't actually feel like much, and that's why I think it's sort of resonant. And it should feel nice, Oh, sorry. It should feel like something that you want to touch, like feeling anything. It should feel natural.
Don't you think the question is whether people are ready for being touched in virtual reality? I think we're still at the stage where we like getting used to all these images. For myself yesterday, I tried this game where it was like a basketball basket, and I was catching the basketball. It was quite an experience. If I imagine myself like being hit by basketballs, like real touching, would be maybe too much.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you're playing like Grand Theft Auto or something, yeah, maybe you're feeling like the gunshot wounds, like playing a boxing game, you actually feel the punches, yeah. But I mean, we're talking about nice experiences here. We're talking about things that you want to touch, like getting to play with like animals, like having a pet dragon, and you get to like stroke the dragon and his scales, and you'd be like, whoa, that's where haptics could go eventually. And we'll be ready for it because we want it.
Thank you, Carl. Small applause. Thank you. Really interesting.